Good day, everyone. Welcome back to our discussion. Today, we will be discussing the external anatomy of a fish, wherein we will focus our discussions on the external regions of a fish and the body forms and shapes, as well as the fin configurations, and also the positioning of the pelvic fins of a particular bony fish, and different kinds of fish. And the different caudal fin shapes. So those are our discussions for today. Now, before we proceed, let us first differentiate the term morphology and anatomy. Morphology in biology is the study of the size, shapes, and structure of animals, plants, and organisms, and other relationships of their constituent parts, while the term anatomy is also refers to the study of biological structure, but usually suggests the study of the details of either gross or microscopic structure. So, meaning to say, the morphology entails the study of the size, the shape, and the structure of a living organism, while the anatomy suggests still the structure but entails on the detail of that particular structure. May it either be a gross structure or a microscopic structure. Now, here we have the basic directions of a particular fish. Now, the anterior part, we call it a cranial, and then the posterior part, we call it as a caudal. And the upper part is the dorsal, and the bottom part is the ventral. And of course, here are some of the features of a common bony fish. This describes basically the external parts of a fish, the pelvic fins, the pectoral fins, the dorsal fin, the caudal fin, and the anal fin. Later on, we will be discussing each one of them as we go along in our discussion. And then this is a typical external anatomy of a fish. As I've said, the anterior is the cranial and then posterior is caudal. Each one of this entails a different functions and definitions in the part of a fish. So one of your tasks in this lecture discussion, perhaps it will be on task 8, that you will be drawing external anatomy of a fish and external anatomy of a cartilaginous fish, and then you're going to label each part and then describe its functions. And then here we have the specific names of a several external regions of the fish. So we have here the snout. It is the area of the head between the tip of the upper jaw and the interior margin of the orbit. So this is basically the snout of the fish. And this is the cheek, and this is the nape. Meaning to say yung noo niya, yung nape, yung tawag natin dyan. And then the operculum is this one, the ones that covers the gills. So it is a plate-like structure covering the bronchial chamber and consisting of the four bones. These are, if you take a look at the closely, the operculum, it consists of the four structures or four bones: the operate, preopercle, subopercle, and interopercle. Now, the bronchiotegials are located somewhere here in below the operculum. And then the isthmus is in between the brachiotegals and the pelvic fins down below. So the area of the throat, ventral to the gill openings. And the lateral line is basically extends from the head towards the caudal peduncle. So in your sample previously, you have probably observed a line somewhere in the middle of the body of the fish. So that's what we call as the lateral line. It serves as a sensory system consisting of pores and canals along the head and the body for detection of vibrations and the water movement associated with perforated scales along the body. That's the reason also why if you have noticed, some of the fish swims in schools, no? And you might be wondering why hindi sila nagkakabanggaan. It's because of this lateral line that basically detects vibration once the nearby objects is nearing to them. And then the caudal peduncle obviously is located somewhere in the base of the caudal fin, and then the anus or the vent terminal opening of the alimentary canal, this one. And sometimes it is situated beside the genital papillae. And then here we have the comparison between the bony fish and the cartilaginous fish with respect to their external anatomy. So this is basically the external features of a snapper and smooth-hound shark. So the difference between them is first the gill cover. The bony fish has this gill cover or the operculum, while the smooth-hound shark do not have the operculum, but they have the external gill slits. So they do not have the gill covering. And then secondly is their dorsal fin. So you might have noticed that the dorsal fin of a bony fish is merged and separated and identified as the first dorsal fin and the second dorsal fin. Sometimes the first dorsal fin, or mostly, mostly the first dorsal fin are hard fin rays, meaning to say it consists of spines, and the second dorsal fin is the soft braid portion. So the soft braid meaning to say they do not have spines in that particular second dorsal fin. So, unlike ray fin fish, sharks do have a separated dorsal fin. So, the first dorsal fin is situated at the middle part of the body, and then the second dorsal fin is situated near the caudal fin. The third difference between the two is their caudal fin. So the caudal fin is for the bony fish is homocercal, and this is truncate type of caudal fin, and this is the heterocercal. Heterocercal meaning to say they are not distributed or equally distributed or equally distant the upper and lower lobe of the caudal fin. So those are the three. And the fourth difference is their buoyancy, which we will be discussing on the last slide of this lecture discussion. And then here we have the different body forms of the fish. So we have here the compressed, the depressed, globiform, anguilliform, and fossiform. So all of the fishes falls down to this five body forms. So compressed or compressiform fishes have flattened laterally, sometimes strongly, so often deep bodied organism. So compressed meaning to say parang nalapad siya ventrally, no? Or laterally. And then depressed are flattened dorsoventrally. So, examples of these are yung mga flounders, yung mga skates and rays. So, those are types of depressed fishes. So, depressed meaning to say a flattened dorsoventrally. When we say dorsoventrally, meaning to say um, the dorsal part, no, the dorsal part is flattened. So if you might remember, the dorsal and the ventral part of the fish. And then the globiform. Globiform is obviously rounded, often spherical. So examples of these are mga puffer fish and etc. And then anguilliform are greatly elongate and usually tubular. So anguilliform are like eels, mga hagfishes, lampreys, those are anguilliforms. And then fusiform are roughly bullet-shaped, often tapering both anteriorly and posteriorly. So these are basically most of the tunas or the fast-swimming fishes. So we classify them as fusiforms with respect to their body form. So to explain further, this is the body shapes with the corresponding cross sections. I know you are all familiar with the cross-sectioning, no? Cross-sectioning means to say, pinutol natin yung body ng fish, and this is how it will look like if it is a fusiform. And this is a compressiform, this is a depressiform, this is the eel-like or anguilliform, and this is the combination of shapes. And sometimes referred as the globiforms like puffer fishes, frog fishes, and suckers, lump suckers rather. And then examples of these are tunas. For the fusiform compressed are angelfish or filefish. Depressed are skates, rays, shark, flounders, and etc. And each of which has different characteristics with regards to their swimming and feeding behaviors, as explained here. So you might want to take a look at that. And then here are the different body shapes of the six categories based on the body configuration. So first is the rover predator. So the rover predator, as explained here in this figure 2.1, taken from the book that we are referencing on. So the first is the A and B, which is this one and this one. This is a Atlantic blue marlin, no? They are considered as the rover predators. So meaning to say they swim fast or they are located somewhere in the pelagic region. And secondly, the lie-in-wait predators. The lie-in-wait predators are, say for example, the letter C is, this is a barracuda. So barracudas, mga needlefishes, yung locally known as balo, those are lie-in-wait predators. And then number three are surface-oriented fish. The surface-oriented fish here is the D. So this is a surface-oriented fish like mga ano bang mga surface-oriented fish like or flying fish. And then some of the Indian mackerels and sardines and many other surface-dwelling organisms. And then bottom fish or number four E is the bottom rover. So most of the catfishes are the bottom fishes, no? Catfishes, and then F is bottom clinger, no? Yung mga dartings, no? Yung mga darting organisms. And then G is flatfish, obviously the mga flounders and rays and skates. And then H is the rat tails, no? Rat tails are very known to be living in the deepest part of the ocean. And then deep-bodied fish or pomfrets, no? Ito. And then J are eel-like fish like mga hagfish, lampreys, eels, and etc. So those are the different body shapes with respect to the body configurations of the fish based also on their adaptations in their distribution in the aquatic environment. And then here we have the first one, the rover predators. So the rover predators, examples of which are their characteristics, the rover predators characteristics are constantly moving, searching out for prey, which they capture through pursuit. So they are characterized as the fast swimmers, no? Sila yung pinakamabilis lumangoy. Includes fusiform or streamlined body types. And with a pointed head ending with a terminal mouth and narrow caudal peduncle, tipped with a forked tail. Later on, we will discuss ano ba itong forked tail, ano ba itong narrow peduncle, ano ba itong terminal mouth, no? So, ang mga mouth shapes probably will be discussed in the next lecture discussion. It will not be covered for today's session. So, apart of that, examples of that are tuna, mackerel, and swordfish. The fins are more or less evenly distributed throughout the body, providing stability and maneuverability. The fins are more or less evenly distributed about the body, providing stability and maneuverability. The fins are more or less evenly distributed about the body, providing stability and maneuverability. And examples of which are Euthinus affinis, or otherwise known as the mackerel tuna. And we have also here the Scomberemus sera, or the Pacific sera. And then the Sarda orientalis, or the striped bonito, right? So those are the three rover predators as an example of the fossiform body types. And then here we have the lie-in-wait predators, as mentioned earlier, the barracudas and the what's this? The needlefish. So they are mainly piscivorous, meaning to say they eat fish, smaller fish. So they have that morphology well suited for ambushing or fast swimming prey. So they basically are piscivorous. Body form is still a fusiform, but it is also elongated, often torpedo-like, meaning to say parang bullet type yung kanilang mga body shape. And then head is flattened and the mouth is filled with the pointed teeth, hence the piscivorous in nature. In many species, mouth is largely contained in a long, pointed snout. So that's basically their main characteristic as a piscivorous fish. Caudal fin tends to be large. So as you can see here, their caudal fin um, is larger than their body. And then their arrangement or their dorsal and anal fins placed far back to the body often line with the other. So as you can see here, this is an opposite, no? Itong dorsal fin is opposite with their pelvic fin. And then, I mean anal fin, and then this is the first dorsal fin opposite to their pelvic fin. So far from their body. And then examples of which are still barracudas and needlefish. And then here we have proof that barracudas and needlefish are piscivorous in nature. So you can see here they are piercing their prey, which are the fish. And then another body shape is the surface-oriented predators. So this particular fish typically are small in size with an upward point mouth or upward pointing mouth, a dorsoventrally flattened head with a large eyes and a fusiform deep body. So meaning to say when you say dorsoventrally, meaning to say it is flattened in the dorsal part. And then a dorsal fin is placed towards the rear of the body, well suited for capturing planktons and small fishes that live near the water surface or insects that land on the surface. Stagnant water, their morphology is in particular suitable for taking advantage of their thin layer of oxygen-rich water that exists in the air-water interface. The mouth of the fish can be placed in the layer of the water, then pumped across the gills. Okay, so examples of which are killifish, mosquito fish, or anableps, and then half-beak and the flying fish, of course. So it's, again, they are the surface-oriented predators. And then here we have the bottom fish. So bottom fish possess a wide variety of body shapes, all of them adapted to a life in nearly continuous contact with the bottom, and some of which includes the catfish, the rat tails, and the sturgeon fishes. So their life is nearly continuous contact in the bottom, and these are said to be the descendants of the primitive reptiles. In most fish, the swim bladder is reduced or absent, and most are flattened in one direction or the other. So, either meron silang swim bladder or wala silang swim bladder. Part of their swim bladder sometimes is flattened in one direction. So, bottom fish can be divided into five overlapping types: the bottom rovers, the bottom clingers, the bottom hiders, flatfish, and rat tails. So, these are the five classifications of the bottom fishes. So again, the examples of which are catfish, rat tails, and sturgeons. And here we have some more explanations on the bottom rovers. No, bottom rovers are rover predator like body, except that the head tends to be flattened, the back is humped, and the pectoral fins are enlarged. Many bottom rovers among the bony fishes have small eyes and well-developed barbers or whiskers equipped with taste buds. So as you can see here, this is a sturgeon having a barbel, and this is perhaps a catfish having a barbel. So these barbels do have taste buds, indicating their ability to find prey at night or in a murky water. Many sharks with their inferior mouths, flattened heads, and large pectoral fins can also be classified as bottom rovers. So there you have it. And then examples of bottom rovers are catfish, the armored catfish, and the sturgeon. So these are the typical examples of the bottom rovers fish. And then the bottom clingers are mainly small fish with flattened heads, large pectoral fins, and structures, usually modified pelvic fins and allow them to adhere to the bottom. So this is an example of a bottom clinger fish. This is locally known as iswil in our place. Iswil, a freshwater goby. And such structures are handy in swift streams or intertidal areas or with strong currents. So they are known to be bottom clingers. And they sometimes have this parang suction cup to cling on the surfaces like rocks and surfaces like sandy bottoms. So that's the bottom clingers. And then another type of bottom fish are the bottom hiders. Similar in many respects to the bottom clingers, but they lack the clinging devices or yung mga modified pelvic fins. And they tend to have more elongated bodies and smaller heads. These forms usually live under the rocks and crevices or lie quietly on the bottom in still water. Examples of which are darters or the Persidae and many Blennidaes or Blennies, and the latter contains species and range from good bottom hiders to more eel-like forms. So here are examples: the Blennidae and the darters or the Persidae. So those are the bottom hiders. They basically are found sometimes or mostly under the rock, under the substrate, or even under the sun for most gobies. And we locally name them as mga subok. And then another type of a bottom fish are the flatfish. The flatfish have most extreme morphologies of the bottom fish. So examples once again are the flounders and the skates and rays. So those are the flatfishes. And then here we have the rat tails. The rat tails have a rat tail shape is another type of body shape that has independently evolved in both Osteichthyes and Chondrichthyes. If you still remember, Osteichthyes are again mga bony fishes and Chondrichthyes are cartilaginous fishes. Examples of which are grinidaires, and blatulas, chimeras have bodies that begin with large pointy snouted heads and large pectoral fins and end in long pointed rat-like tails. So again, these are the examples of rat tails. And then let's proceed to the fin configurations of the different fishes. So fins are either paired or unpaired. The unpaired fins, also called as the median fins, also include dorsal, anal, and caudal fins, as well as the adipose fin in some fishes. The paired fins include pectoral fin and pelvic fins, and this is a typical example of a bony fish having this paired and unpaired fins. This is the unpaired fins or the median fin, which is spinous dorsal fin and soft dorsal fin, also a median fin, which is a caudal fin and the anal fin. And these are the paired fins, the pelvic fin and pectoral fins. And this is how it look like into some species that have different configurations with regards to their fin arrangement or configuration. And some of the fishes, like for example, the actinopterygian fishes, have this fin configurations having both spiny dorsal fin and soft-rayed dorsal fin. So in some fishes, this is separated, no, and we call them as the first and second dorsal fin. So this is some of the configurations of some fishes, particularly the actinopterygian fishes. Some of the fishes also have only soft dorsal rays or soft dorsal fins, and some have spines and dorsal rays. We call it the notched dorsal. So it is separated into two dorsal fins, and some have single dorsal spines and soft rays. So this part here is spine and this part here is soft, and sometimes they have separate dorsals, the spines and the soft rays. So these are different configurations with respect to the adaptations of different pinipterygian fishes, and some of which also have different fin rays. Again, this is how it look like if it does have simple ray, no, just the spines, And this is a branched ray. So as you can see, one ray here, there are different branches of fins here. And then this is another configuration with respect to the serrated spine or the non-serrated spine. So those are different configurations with respect to their adaptations also to the surroundings. And then let's proceed to the pelvic fin positioning. Now, the pelvic fins of fishes are considerably in their position on their body, a feature usually useful in distinguishing many groups. No, we have what we call as the abdominal or inserted well posterior to the pectoral fins. We also have the thoracic or inserted slightly posterior to the directly under the pectoral fins, and the jugular inserted slightly anterior to the pectoral fins, and the mental inserted far forward, often near the symphysis or the lower jaw. So here are the different positionings of the pelvic fins in different fishes. So um, some more features that explains the jugular, abdominal, and thoracic type of pelvic fin positioning. And here are the pelvic fins situated across the different varieties of finfish and cartilaginous fishes. And that's all for the pelvic fins. And now let's proceed to the caudal fins. So the caudal fin shapes or the caudal fins of fishes come in variety of shapes that are roughly related to the species swimming behavior. Slow-moving fishes have often rounded caudal fins. Fast-swimming fishes have deeply forked fins with steep upper and lower lobes. Most sharks are nearly lineages of ray fin fishes have a heterocercal caudal fin in which the vertebral column is deflected dorsally and extends along the upper, larger caudal fin lobe. So these are the adaptations of the slow-moving fishes. This is adaptation of fast-swimming fishes, and these are the characteristic of the sharks. And most ray fin fish have homocercal caudal fin and extremely symmetrical and supported by a series of laterally flattened bones. And a few specialized groups of flying fishes have hypocercal caudal fin in which the lower lobe is larger than the upper lobe. That enables them to leap above the water. And here are what we were talking about. The rounded, no sharp or straight edges, convex posteriorly, this one. This is a characteristic of examples for mga snakeheads. No, snakeheads have this rounded caudal fins. Truncate posterior profile ventrically. So truncate basically has this straight type of caudal fin. And then emarginate, upper and lower rays slightly longer than central rays. So upper and lower are slightly longer. So this is emarginate. And then fork, separated upper and lower lobes joined with a sharp angle. So this one, this is a forked, and lunate is a crescent shape posterior with extremely larger upper and lower lobes. So this is a characteristics of the lunate type of caudal fin. And heterocercal is vertebral column is deflected dorsally and extends along the upper and larger caudal fin lobe. And this one is a pointed type of caudal fin, which is characteristics of some eels and bottom-dwelling organisms. And what are the functions of fins? Now, these are the dorsal fins are for stabilization for bass and salmon, and propulsions for eels. While in most fish, propulsion is aided with the caudal fin, and for the seahorse, serves as stabilization. And the pelvic fins and the pectoral fins is station keeping propulsion. So these are basically that keeps them on that right position or station. And the anal fin is for stabilization in most fishes. So these are the different functions of fins. And then here we have the mechanisms of buoyancy. So among sharks, they have this esqualene. They lack this what we call as the swim bladder. Wala silang swim bladder unlike the bony fishes. But they have this esqualene or the lipid accumulation that makes them afloat, no? Kasi wala silang swim bladder, but they have this squalene or a lipid accumulation. So this is basically the buoyancy of the shark that keeps them afloat. And the fact that the body of the shark is wing-shaped, no? And the pectoral fin pushes the water down to the lift shark up. So ito yung elevate sa kanya or escalate. And then the liver full of lightweight lipids and lightweight skeleton of scales. So since they are cartilaginous. While the bony fishes have the swim bladder of a particular organism is neutrally buoyant at a particular depth. So it depends upon adaptation of the fish on which they are situated in the aquatic or pelagic environment, no? Kasi kapag bottom dwellers sila, of course, they have this some sort of configurations with their swim bladders or sometimes absent ang kanilang swim bladders and they have different configurations or adaptations on how to keep afloat or maintain their buoyancy. So those are the different mechanisms of buoyancy, no? Those are our coverage for module 2. And I guess that's all for our module 3. In our next lecture, we will be discussing the different mouth types of fishes and with respect to their feeding behaviors and distribution in the pelagic environment. Before we end, I'd like to show you your task for this activity. I mean, for this module. So, in this, you have here your task 6. Basically, you're going to identify the different parts of the fish. No? This is a typical external anatomy of a cartilaginous fish, which is a shark. And then here we have the identification of the following parts of a bony fish. So you have there the 14 numbers that you're going to identify, and each of which are already given. And then task 7 is basically identification of the body forms of the following fish species. And then the next part of this one is basically some identifications as well on the external structures. And then your task 8 would be the one that I told you earlier in the lecture, that you're going to draw an external anatomy of a fish and cartilaginous fish and label its parts and identify its function. Then you're going to provide a short discussion on the differentiation between the two fish with respect to its external anatomy. And don't forget in your drawing to write your name handwritten to avoid plagiarism. So that's all for this lecture discussion and your task for this module. If you have any questions, feel free to approach me or reach me by our group chat or post something in the posted tasks. So again, thank you very much for joining and I hope to see you again in the next video.